Grand final weekend. There's probably hardly any spots already left down the Yarra. People are elbows out, getting in there, trying to get a good spot near the Barbie. What a weekend. It's possibly not a weekend, however, to go and buy a house. So maybe it's time to reflect a little about how you're going to plan your next move. If you're in the market to buy a property, whether you're looking at an investment property or a home to live in, your forever home, then let's look at that now. It is time to talk that with Greville Pabst from WBP. That's hard to say early in the morning. Good morning, Greville.
Good morning, Richelle.
Now, Grand Final weekend is renowned for being a weekend where, property-wise, there's really nothing for sale. Is that still the case?
Yeah, there's not a lot of stock this weekend. That's really going to be reserved for the following weekend, where we should have a Super Saturday next weekend.
Is that what happens? It sort of all just tips into the following weekend?
Yeah, it's all carried forward because people don't want to really be distracted by buying properties in auction, and the quality of the stock is just not there this weekend.
Do people still do it? Do they still say, oh no, look, I'm going to do it, and do you advise against them? Who would try and sell a house on Grand Final weekend? Someone that's a little stubborn?
No, there are people that do offer their house for sale this weekend, but we would advise them against that because people really have their mind on other things this weekend. There's barbecues and all sorts of things.
1300 222 774, or you can text 0437 774 774. Taking your calls this morning with Greville about property. If you have a particular question, if you're in the market, if you're thinking about selling, if you're thinking about buying, now is the time to give us a buzz. 1300 222 774. Greville, it's quite an emotional time, buying and selling a property, but in particular for purchasing a property. How do you keep your emotions in check to make sure that you don't walk away like I nearly did once, and that was paying too much for a house that basically didn't even have a roof?
Yeah, you're right, Richelle. Buying real estate can be really an emotional decision for both the vendor and the buyer. And the more we understand that and deal with it, the better decisions that we make. But firstly, what I like to say is get emotional about the property and its selection, but don't get emotional about price. So if you're spending $500,000, or let's face it, in Melbourne the median house price is now over $650,000.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
It's hard to not get emotional about that, though, isn't it, really?
It is. But I want to become emotional about that. And I want to give yourself the permission to become emotional and excited about a property, because it is a lot of money. So let your emotions run over that property when selecting. People say, leave emotions at the door, and don't use emotions, but that really is a lot of rot. We've been given this sense, emotions, and we should use it to our advantage. Things like smell and colour, and it really affects our moods.
So you mean when you're looking at purchasing a property, what to look out for? How a house smells is important?
Of course.
Because if it smells bad, that would be bad.
Exactly. But, to give you an example, I walked into a really nice apartment in Hawthorne a couple of months ago. I walked in and straight away, what captured me was that northerly window with that light streaming in, and we've all felt those hairs that come up on our arms when we walk into a property. Properties like that do evoke emotions, and they're types of properties that you would want to live in. They're types of properties that you'd be quite happy at some point in your life, living there, or having your son or your daughter live there, or your parents.
Because lots of people say that. They say, I'll know it when I see it, or I'll know it when I feel it, when I walk into that property, and you just think, or there'll be times when you walk in and you go, I can't put my finger on what it is, but this is not the house for me, or this is not the property for me. I can't imagine myself living here. And there's nothing wrong with the property. It's just... Yeah, and Dennis Tenuto, it's just a vibe that you get.
Exactly. But you do have to use that, because they're the same emotions that a tenant will look at when they go through the property, and the amount of rent that they will pay. It's the same emotion that an investor will feel, and it's the same emotion that an owner occupies. So you have to use it. But don't get emotional about the price, because that's something that needs to be dealt with early doors, and that's all about facts and rationale. And I see so often on an auction, and right in the heat where the emotions are running high, that you can see that people are getting emotional about price, and often we see them paying too much because they haven't had that rational discussion with themselves well prior to the auction itself.
1300 222 774, or you can text on 0437 774 774. Jenny has sent in a text saying, we bought our house on grand final day in 2010. There was plenty of competition. The sale was in the morning. So, that was, I guess, a couple of years ago now. But
yeah, there are still auctions today, and typically they are, all before 12.
Before it all kicks off.
It all kicks off.
Now, what's your tip then? So if you're going in and you're thinking, okay, don't get emotional about price. So is it about setting your price and making that making a really concrete decision about what the top dollar is that you're going to pay and not budging over that? Or is it about, are you a fan of sending someone else in to go in for your auction if that's the case?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. You need to do your research. That's the most important thing. So, make sure that you do your numbers. You can engage professionals to do that for you, whether it's a property advisor or a valuer. But certainly, set your mark around the price and stick to that. Don't get carried away with the emotion at the auction. So it's important to do that homework first, because look, property is increasingly complex as well, and there are many distractions now. There's, when you think about it, just residential real estate, there's older style, there's new, there's townhouses, there's off the plan, there's serviced apartments, there's sticks and bricks, there's all sorts of things. So you need to really consider all of those factors, because not all property performs the same.
What's your view on high density apartments seem to be popping up around a lot, sort of, I guess, within a sort of 10, 15k radius around the city. And a lot of these places, they've just changed dramatically in terms of how they're built and the sort of lifestyle that they're catering for. So you're not even really seeing kitchens in a lot of these apartments anymore. There's just like a little sink and stovetop almost in the lounge room. Are these sort of styles of property, are they going to assist as to how it is now? Are these the sort of apartments that people do want, or is it something that's just cost-cutting and eventually we're going to see a flick back to actually having kitchens in apartments again?
Yeah, it's a good question, and certainly what we've seen in the last few years is the proliferation of the amount of apartments that are being constructed in the city. And everybody wants to live close to that big village. People don't want to really live, particularly younger people. They want to live, it's lifestyle that attracts them now. So, and people are prepared to live in smaller spaces, those 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments. But we also need to be careful about those selections, and how are those types of property, those new and off the plan, how are they going to perform into the future? And that's a question, I think, that if you're investing in property, you really need to do some homework there and research that, because it's all about good decisions and bad decisions. And if you're a young person or a first-time investor, a good decision can set you up for the rest of your life. But if you make a bad decision, it could really set you back for 10 years.
Well, I guess that's, once upon a time it was easy, the idea of buying property, bricks and mortar, you couldn't go wrong. But there's a lot of apprehension out there at the moment about whether or not we're going to see a property bubble burst, whether or not people are overpaying. There isn't that comfort, I guess, of just thinking, okay, well, if I manage to be in a fortunate enough position to buy myself an investment property, it can only go up. That's not necessarily the case anymore, is it?
No, that's definitely not the case. I mean, not all properties, as I said, perform the same. There are some that perform at 8, 9, 10% compound annual growth per annum, and there are others that don't perform at all. So the key is in the selection and getting advice around, what you should buy. So there are a number of rules that we need to stick by, and particularly in Melbourne, it really is about the village these days and the lifestyle. So selecting a property close to one of the great villages in Melbourne, whether that be the Elwood Village or Kensington or Rathdown Street, Carlton North, a property's relationship to that village and that lifestyle is all important, particularly in Melbourne.
Luke has called in from Coburg. Good morning, Luke from Coburg. From Coburg. How are you, Luke? How are you going?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, thanks.
What question do you have for Greville?
Well, I've recently separated from my wife, and we want to sell our house in Brunswick, which we paid $620 for. It's a 3-bedroom house, but it's on the corner of a reasonably busy street. So, just wondering what we might expect.
So you're looking at selling and, yeah?
Yeah.
How long ago did you buy?
Bought about 6 years ago.
Okay. Well, a 3-bedroom house, Greville, in Brunswick, can you go wrong even if it is on a busy street?
Look, it's difficult to give individual and specific advice on that, Luke. But yeah, probably the best thing you could do to get an understanding is firstly get a couple of local agents to come out and give you their opinion on market value. And I always recommend too that you get an independent valuer to also, for a couple of $100, it puts the power of the negotiation back to you. The agents can give you their opinions, but you actually, if you have your own independent valuation, you have the power and you know what it's really what it's worth. So I'd recommend you do that.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Good on you. Thanks, Luke. 1300 222 774. I mean, we're talking about the emotions of buying and selling, and unfortunately you do have things like Luke was saying, sometimes you can be selling because of things like a divorce. So emotions are going to be running higher, so seeking advice is definitely a good point, which probably means it's a good time for me to say that the information today provided is general in nature and shouldn't be considered personal advice. Please seek independent advice before making any decisions. Greville, we've had some great texts come in on 0437 774 774. This is from Claire in Bendigo, where first-time home buyers in country Victoria, thank goodness, much more affordable, she says, but we don't want to build. I've heard there is a discount on stamp duty for first home buyers. Is that true? How do we work out that discount? Is it a percentage?
Yeah, look, first home buyers, it's up to a value of $600,000, and you are eligible for a 50% discount to the stamp duty.
Oh, that's not too bad. Another text has come in saying, we were talking about the emotions of auctions before, and this has come from Kat at Viewbank saying, I will never go to an auction again. 4 years ago, we had a plan that my husband would do all the bidding. I ended up putting my hand up and I was quickly told to get off and get out of there. You do need to make a decision, don't you, about if you're going with a partner or with a friend or with a relative, who's going to be the one that's throwing their hand up and who isn't. Cara from South Yarra has asked, what does your guest think will happen to the market in general over the next year? She wants to buy something in either Hampton or South Yarra.
Well, the market really has performed quite strongly in the 12 months to date. In fact, Melbourne is up about 13-14%. So we've had extraordinary growth.
High, isn't it?
It is, but I've noticed over the last month that the fizz seems to have sort of just come off the market a little bit. We don't have the 4 to 5 bidders at auction that we saw during the winter when stock was a bit tighter. But now I'm seeing only 2 to 3 bidders, and I think as the spring stock comes on and there'll be more available, I think we'll find that there'll be more opportunities for buyers. But certainly the suburbs that you mentioned, was it Hampton and South Yarra. It's they're quite expensive suburbs in Melbourne, and Hampton for a house, entry level now is pretty much about $1.3 million, and South Yarra you're probably around the same sort of level just to get in, and you don't get much for that.
I never I never cease to be amazed at how much now apartments even go for. Once upon a time you told me that a fairly basic 2-bedroom apartment would sell for $750,000. I want to say, get out of here, you're crazy. But that's what happens. Frank's in Thornbury. Good morning, Frank.
Oh, g'day. How's it going?
Good. What was your question?
I don't really have a question. I just want to give my opinion, really, where we've recently been in the process of buying and selling a house, we're in Thornbury, so we love the area so much that we brought only a few doors down on the same
At least the move was easy.
Yeah. Well, the move happens at the end of the year, but now we're in the process of selling our house. But yeah, I just want to say, like, when we bought the house, like, we actually went through a different agent, and they put us onto someone who helped us bid. And we did all the things of, like, I did a great spreadsheet of what our budget was and what we hoped to get for our house if we sold, and all that kind of stuff. And
So you felt really organised going into it?
Yeah. I work in IT, so, I'm the spreadsheet kind of guy.
Nice.
My partner's just like all, maybe this amount. So no, I've got everything on down.
And it's fairly impressive too if you rock up to an auction and you put people off. If you bust out a spreadsheet, and the person next to you goes, "Oh God, they mean business." I'm not sure if I'm going to throw my hand up against someone that's got a PowerPoint presentation going on. Good on you, Frank. Thank you. It does show and does pay to be organised. That's the key we're learning. A text has come in saying, "Hello. In 1996, my father's block was worth $180,000. It's now worth over $1 million."
There you go.
So 1996, it wasn't that. Oh, what does it feel like that long ago?
Yeah.
I mean, it is. God, I'm showing my age. But the 90s, it just doesn't seem like that long ago. But
No, and we've just come out of the recession that we had to have.
this is a text question, it's an interesting question. Is there an app for investors that has rental income on one side and interest on the other? Are there little things like that you can take with you to sort of arm yourself?
Look, I don't really get these gimmicks, Richelle. When you're buying real estate, as I said, there are people that will buy a property without having seen it, or they'll buy a property, online. I mean, as we've been talking about, emotions are important. You have to go and see the property and feel the emotions of that property. So, there is plenty of data around, certainly, to enable you to do your research, and there are enough professionals to help you. But using gimmicky things in terms of, what is the property worth? I mean, there is so much variation, and the confidence score is not really high enough for you to rely on making one of the biggest decisions in your life.
1300 222 774 is the number to call. Are restrictions changing, especially in these areas that you're talking about? And I'm going to raise an example here. There was along the canal in Elwood, and I'm sure the locals probably complained about it, but there was just an old house, probably on a big double block, a beautiful old house that was knocked down, and apartments are in the process of being built there. And I've been watching them be built as I go for my daily walks along there. And I said to one of the guys working there, because I was trying to work out if they were 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom, and I said, "Oh, how many apartments are going up in here?" And he said 28.
Yeah.
So you've gone from having one neighbour to 28 neighbours. I was in shock. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, and this is potentially on a double block. What are the restrictions now in terms of how far you can build to the footpath, and how do you go from having 28? And that's if there's only one person living in each apartment. What if they're all couples?
Yeah, exactly. I think I know that project that you're talking about. It was a double block and or knocked over, and I think it was 23 apartments were constructed on it. But what has changed is the zonings have changed, and what that means is that some of those leafy Melbourne suburbs that are included with what's known as the neighbourhood, residential neighbourhood zone, that's now protected. So all developers can do, all you can do now within those zones is pretty much do a 2-lot plan of subdivision. So you can't do in many cases those larger developments that you're talking about anymore. And what that means is that those the other zonings allow more multi-unit development, and they're going to now push out into the middle and the outer suburbs. So the fabric of our traditional neighbourhoods, that's going to change.
Because I mean, we're talking about buying the villages and here and there, because that's where the money is, that's where the investment is. But if we keep building like this, then you're going to lose that village atmosphere, or you're going to lose what was so attractive about those suburbs to begin with. You've just got to look at the high-rise apartments in South Yarra now. The landscape of South Yarra is changing dramatically.
And that's the whole thing. When you're selecting property, people will say, "Oh, South Yarra, big tick," and I've made it. I've bought in South Yarra, but there's probably only 10 streets in South Yarra that we would buy in. because South Yarra has many compromises. There's many one-way streets. There's, as you said, there's precincts where there's high-rise which can overshadow and affect your privacy, and there's a lot of railway lines that traverse the suburb. So there's lots of things when you're buying and investing in property. There are many attributes that you need to consider because not all property performs the same.
And maybe we need to think outside the square like Brian from Northcote potentially is. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, how are you?
Good. Where are you looking at investing?
Looking at probably regional Victoria, in places like Ballarat and Bendigo for investment purposes. And the rental yields there look quite good. So I was interested in getting your opinion on those sorts of areas for a
And good train lines, aren't they? Lots of people commute and things like that.
Yep, that's right. So
What's your opinion, Greville?
Yeah, look, Brian, Bendigo and Ballarat, great places to live. But if you look at the investment performance, it's just simply not as good as being closer in to Melbourne. It depends on your stage in life. If you're looking for income and you want higher yield, well, you're certainly going to get that in regional areas. But if you're at an age where capital growth and becoming wealthier out of property is important to you, you don't become wealthier through property by investment yield. You get it out of capital growth. And if you're chasing capital growth, my recommendation is to be closer as you can and into the Melbourne CBD.
Right. So looking at sort of retirement in 8 years, it's probably a position to sort of buy and hold, I suppose. So, and then hopefully have that paid off by that time. Is that?
Well, without giving you specific advice, if you've got 8 to 10 years, well, maybe invest in a high growth asset.
Yep.
Whether that be a flat in Elwood or St Kilda or South Yarra, Paran or somewhere like that, and then in 8 to 10 years' time, then convert that capital growth into a higher income producing asset for when you retire. You need income.
Yeah. Okay.
Good luck, Brian. Thank you. 1300 222 774. Celia has called in from Hawthorn. Good morning, Cecilia.
Oh, good morning. Yes, I was interested in the comment about the emotional side of property, but mine is a completely different one. I live in a very nice apartment in Hawthorn. I'm widowed as of 2.5 years, and I wondered where the advantage of moving to a retirement type complex against staying where I am, and if those exit fees and all the expenses that go with it are worth that move. However, to be very lonely in an apartment as I am, against the advantages of a communal or community, is a very difficult decision.
That doesn't get more emotional than that, Greville, does it? What's your advice there for Cecilia?
No, and look, retirement complexes are quite a specialised area of real estate, and so you really need to get some independent advice on that before you.
Well, I already have,
yes.
And of course on paper figures look quite daunting, but then again it's about how much quality of life you have to enjoy against not,
I think you've already made up your mind, Cecilia, reading between the lines. I think you want to go.
And leaving family advice out of it to get mixed, oh, don't do that, Mum. Oh, goodness me,
No, you do what is right for you.
Oh, thank you, because that's the one that is the hardest one to make. The decision is what is right for you when you've spent your life with a large family, a husband, etc., and never having to make this decision for yourself.
And retirement complexes aren't what used to be either.
Oh, no,
they're not.
I'm talking about Kew, Hawthorn.
Yeah, and they're funky little,
Yeah, so it is.
It's not mine. Your family is probably saying, "Shut up, Richelle. Stop telling her to do this." But
there are a lot of them. Like I shouldn't because they'll be saying, "Oh my God, Mum, was that you on the radio?"
Yeah.
With 10 children, that's a lot of input, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, best of luck, Cecilia. It's a big decision
really
to make.
My decision, isn't it?
It certainly is.
In the end. Well, thank you. It's a very interesting program.
Thank you
so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a lovely grand final. The emotion is so high, and there's one text here that I actually want to read, and this is from Mary in St Kilda, and I couldn't agree more. She's saying, "Hi to you both. I find it amazing sometimes with these types of programs that the focus is on investment advice in real estate. That's the problem we have here. The focus on investment rarely, and it's rarely around the chat that homes are to live in and not always make money on. People do live in murder." And look, she's right, and that's what we're talking about. That's why we get so emotionally attached to these properties, because it's not necessarily about investment. Sometimes it's just your family home, and it's where you want to raise your family, and you want it to be right.
Yeah, and so that decision is about schools as well, and selecting property. If you have children, being close to schools and close to transport, so you can get to work easily and so forth.
What's your tip for the grand final?
Well, my heart is with the Victorian team, but somehow I think that Sydney are going to get up today.
Yeah, have you got a big grand final plan ahead of you?
No, we're looking at a few properties this morning. Still.
No rest for the wicked.
But yeah, this afternoon I'm going to sit back, I think, and watch the game.
All right, mate. Well, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much. Sydney, by how many points do you reckon?
By 8.
8 points. Tight.
He put me on the spot.
So thank you so much. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the calls this morning on 1300 222 774 and to the texts that came through on 0437 774 774.